Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Rockies Daily. I'm your host, Scott Ayers, where we talk all things Colorado Rockies. And look, last episode we talked about the one area the Rockies kind of have a surplus, and that's the outfield, where they can make different moves, where they have the most at their disposal when it comes to making any sort of trades or having some form of competence with this roster. And so I want to look at really the flip end of that equation, which is the first base position for the Rockies, where there just isn't a lot of confidence right now on this roster. And it's the one thing that we've hammered home time and time and time again of what can the Rockies do to help improve this roster and find some sort of help. And I believe that is going to be at the first base position, right? There's still a few more affordable players out there, Nathaniel Lowe and Rhys Hoskins. Those are going to be the two best opportunities for the Rockies to try to improve this lineup. As you know, we're still only a few months away from opening day, but the time just keeps coming and coming. And as that clock keeps ticking, you look at that Rockies roster and you go, still hasn't improved, still hasn't gotten better. And for this first base position, you're not expecting leaps and bounds, and you're not looking for someone who's going to change things for the Rockies long term, but you're looking for a short-term solution. And I think Hoskins and Lowe offer that. The third option, obviously, is something we've talked about, is making a trade for a first baseman or someone who can play that, right? We've talked about Nick Castellanos as a potential player who has obviously been in the outfield for, the majority of his career, but as he continues to struggle defensively, could be an option that you slot in at the first base position, especially because there's rumors that the Phillies would eat the majority of that contract. And the Rockies really wouldn't have to give up much to get him. And so for Colorado, I do think it's pretty pivotal to get someone before you call up Charlie Condon. And you know what? Best case scenario is Condon is MLB ready. He's hitting nukes at the start of the year, and it's not an issue. But just from what we've seen in terms of some of these younger players, they take time to develop, and they take time to actually become notable pieces on a roster. And that's what we're seeing right now for the Rockies. And to have a vet that can actually play and that can hopefully just be a positive presence for this team is desperately needed. We've talked about it on multiple occasions, and it still hasn't changed. And I think what's hard is we just haven't heard too many rumors about who the Rockies could be targeting and who this front office could be going after. I think that's the hardest thing in all of this is we just don't know what the Rockies are going to do. We just don't know. And there just hasn't been much smoke for any of these potential acquisitions. And they're, again, to just, you can't emphasize it enough, they're not crazy acquisitions. You're not breaking the bank to get Lowe or to get Hoskins, right? But still, it is something that this front office needs to do something about, because as it stands, this roster is not built to win much more than they did last year. And I'm not saying getting a first baseman is going to greatly improve that by any means, but it will just hopefully cause a little less bleeding. That is the 2026 season. That will be a pretty darn big wound, but regardless, first base, just go sign someone, right? Like, get someone at a major league level contract. That's all we're asking for. And it's funny, we talk about that. We go from like, just sign a guy, to a guy that we signed. All right, the Rockies signed to a big deal and obviously have a lot of regret in it, and that's Chris Bryant, who just turned 34 years old. Happy birthday, KB. And obviously you hope he is healthy enough to play, but with his current condition, I think that's going to be the big question mark for 2026 is will Chris Bryant be able to see the field again? He's obviously dealt with a lot of injuries in his time in Colorado. The most recently is degenerative disc disease that sidelined him pretty much all of 25. And the hard thing is, it's not just an on the field injury. It's something that he's noted affects him in just everyday life, right? Like walking up the stairs, walking down the stairs. He probably cooks some of the best meals you've ever had in your life, right? It just wouldn't surprise me if he was a great chef at home. The problem is he's feeling pain everywhere. He's in pain 24/7, which is obviously a huge issue for Colorado, considering we owe him about $80 million and we need him to play. And he just can't. He just can't play. And we've noted the Rendon contract and a potential long-term buyout, that you extend it to free up cap space, to free up a roster spot, which is obviously extremely important, especially as you continue to develop players. So it's just a really hard situation. And to make it harder is Chris Bryant is a likable guy. Like, it's not like he's a stubborn jerk that kind of pushes things away. Like, he's a likable guy that, you know what? If I was offered the money that he was offered by Colorado, I'm not saying no. I'm saying yes. Yeah, I can still hit 30 bombs. Yeah, I still got that MVP caliber in me. No, he obviously doesn't have that in him. And it's just one of the unfortunate swing and misses from an old front office that we're lucky is no longer a part of the Colorado Rockies. But needless to say, best case scenario is obviously he can play. Actually, best case scenario is probably some form of long-term buyout that the Rockies pay him for the next 7-8 years, and you just free up space in a roster spot. Second best thing is that he can play and that he can provide anything and be somewhat productive. I mean, play DH, play first, right? If he could play first, that would just solve our issues in segment one. I don't think he can do that though. Until we see something in the spring that shows us that he's not just in complete pain. And that's the hardest part, is he's just in a lot of pain. And it's just hard. It just sucks. It sucks for fans. It sucks seeing a guy that has just had a pretty big misfortune since being here in Colorado. So you hope he recovers, and if he can't, you find a way to just, hey, we'll pay you. You're getting the $80 million. We'll give you $80 million, but it's going to be over the course of the next 10 years. Which, hey, you know what? KB, he seems financially responsible, but might help him out. Can't put it all on black at the casino. Regardless, let's move on. And let's move on to the guy that, the one that truly got away for the Rockies, and that's Nolan Arenado. Arenado, obviously a Rockies legend. He is on that Mount Rushmore of Colorado Rockies, right? We've got his jersey behind me, Father's Day jersey, where he hit a home run for the cycle. He was obviously probably the best defensive player in Rockies history. Name every accolade you want. The reason why I got thinking on this is more of a theory, fan theory. Stick with me here. But look, the Cardinals, they look like they might want to be rebuilding. And the Rockies probably are not going to acquire Nolan Arenado in a trade. It's not going to happen. The Cardinals in the Rockies, it probably won't happen. But what if there's a world where Arenado gets bought out? And the Cardinals say, hey, we're not getting any great offers. See you later. Take a hike. That's where things might get a little interesting. That could be a time where, obviously, Arenado's probably going to be looking home somewhere in California. Angels or Dodgers. If it's the Dodgers, we'll be in a terrible place of pain. Even though we're already in that place, the pain would be worse, right? But still, I find that to be intriguing for Colorado to possibly have an opportunity to look at someone like that. One for one of the many things that we've mentioned, right? The Rockies, it's not like Kyle Karros could be something, but we don't know. He struggled in 25. And the opportunity to bring someone back that, for Monfort, it's a win for him. You're probably going to sell a ton more tickets if Nolan Arenado walked through those doors at Coors Field. Again, this is all out there, right? This isn't something that we would be expecting to see. However, with the Cardinals going into maybe more of a tank approach, it could lead them to letting someone like Arenado go. Obviously, they're going to be looking to make a trade. Rockies probably aren't going to make that deal. But in a world where he gets released and can go anywhere, call the guy. Maybe the bridge is burnt. But that was with Jeff Bridich. That isn't with this new regime. Josh Burns, call him up. He said, "Hey, I worked for the Dodgers. Those guys stink. Come on home to the Rockies." That's all. That's all that segment for the. I just want to dream in La La Land because it probably will never happen. Good things don't really happen to us here in Rockyville, right off of 16th and Blake. But one can dream. One can believe that Nolan Arenado comes home and hits like 50 bombs and leads the Rockies to a World Series. That was my dream once. It got shattered, but the opportunity for him to come home, you might as well just make a phone call if that were to happen with the Cardinals because they're looking to deal. Maybe he gets released. Who knows? But there's a real opportunity there. And then finally, let's talk about spring training. 34 days away. Pitchers and catchers are going to be reporting before we know it. And the number one thing I think the Rockies need to do, it sounds like a broken record, but that is to just make some sort of noise. Not anything crazy. But I think for the fans to have some sort of hope going into this, and I'm not saying these happen in the next week, between now, though, and spring training, to make a signing or two just for this roster to be a little bit more competent and competitive. That's really the big thing here because we know the pitching staff is going to struggle because there's a lot of young guys figuring it out, and that's okay. We know this starting lineup will struggle at times. A lot of young guys trying to figure it out, and that's fine. We don't expect 2026 to be the year that the Rockies figure it out, but we do expect a foundation to be laid out. And that starts with just making different moves that can help with that competence. If you win less than 50 games, if you win less than 45 games, you are not a competent team. And you look at just every single publication that talks about the Rockies, right? Like season goals, try not to suck as much. It's like, who wants to read that for your team? No one. And it all starts in how you can actually build this roster out at obviously every single level, from front office to who you've got at the major league, AAA, down to single A, right? Whatever. But there needs to be a little bit of momentum, and that starts by just making basic signature or signings, to let your fans know that there's some life and to have patience, but to know that there is something being built. So, whole purpose of the last segment is just don't treat it as like, well, you better sign someone by spring training, but just to instill some confidence for the fans. That's, I think, the biggest thing here. But regardless, until we see something, we're just waiting for some sort of momentum as we go into 2026, which will probably be another painful year. But maybe there's a game controller somewhere, settings get put on easy, and the Rockies win like 95 games. Unfortunately, that's probably not the case, and they'll be lucky to win like 55. But regardless, I'm Scott Ayers. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, share it with anyone that you know that might need some daily Rockies content. Until next time, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.